Okay, autism video number two. This is just a brief history of autism, as I know, and some of my knowledge of this comes from the movie Rain Man from the late '80s, Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman, and which anybody who doesn't know anything about autism should probably watch that movie. Apparently, it's a terrible depiction of autism, but it did bring it to the public's consciousness, so it does serve a purpose. And then there was a later movie, There's Something About Mary, that had another, probably a very poor and insulting and stereotypical example of autism in it. Um, the guy who didn't like his ears touched or he attacked people. But I also listened to a couple podcasts and I've searched online a little bit for it. So this is the super brief history of autism. I'm hoping this will be less than 5 minutes. Um, Autism's been around forever. There's no real, according to the podcast, there's no real brain scan you can do to find it. There's no, what do you call it, genetic traits. It does seem to run in families genetically, so they're looking for it genetically, a genetical marker for it, but they haven't found it yet, apparently, according to the web. So what they used to do up until like 1920, 1930 is lock these people away and either kill them outright, as failed. There were children who basically had retardation in their learning or socialization skills, and often their verbal skills. And the severe ones are super hard to, are super low functioning, can't do much for themselves, and are very difficult to look after, like in Rain Man. Rain Man, I wouldn't say is one of the worst functioning autistics, but he's definitely, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd put him at around an 8 for how serious his autism is. I'd put me at maybe a 1, probably not even that high. So they were locked up in insane asylums and mental asylums and nursing homes and stuff like that, and kind of kept out of the public, and often locked in rooms with straitjackets because they, if something set them off or disturbed them, they had a tendency to be physically violent, I guess. Now, one of the topics on the web, on the podcast, was that through World War II, the Allied powers realized that a lot of autistic people, the high-functioning autistics, have a real gift for sensing and recognizing patterns, and thus could be used as code breakers. So they used them throughout the Second World War to break the codes of the Nazi powers, Axis powers. But the Axis, ironically, they felt that they were into their eugenics, their genetic purification, which involved killing a lot of people, and autistics were among them. Anybody who seemed to be lower functioning, socially dysfunctional, mentally dysfunctional, emotionally dysfunctional was murdered or experimented on to death or herded away into camps. So as a result, they were unable to break the codes of the Allies, and vice versa, and the Allies were able to break the codes. This didn't really change the lot of autistics, but it kind of, brought around the grudging realization that even people who have handicaps can be extremely useful in certain situations. Now, on to autism. It was named after a guy named Hans Asberger, an Austrian psychiatrist. Sorry, he didn't actually name it. It was named after him by an English psychiatrist named Lorna Wing. Apparently, this is according to Wikipedia, so it's scary. But I heard kind of the same things in the podcast. She kind of studied the other psychiatrist and realized at some point, maybe after his death, because he died in 1980. That she named the syndrome Asperger's syndrome after him, and it's a very mild form of autism. Again, it's on the autism disorder spectrum, and essentially that was the only time. The way they phrase it here is Lorna Wing popularized the term Asperger's syndrome in 1981 publication, and the first book on it was 1991. Now, on the podcast, it's not mentioned here, but on the podcast they felt it was only present in children until like the late 90s. So we're talking only not even 2 decades of being aware of this. And in the late 90s, they realized that you don't actually grow out of autism. if you're higher functioning, higher intelligence, you're able to communicate with people, all of which are difficult for Asperger's autism disorder symptom people. You're kind of able to work on your weaknesses and either avoid the problems or mask them or basically get through and function through life. I would even put it above Asperger's. Most Asperger's sufferers are, I would say, above the listing of high functioning. High functioning autistics generally still need help to get through day to day. Most Asperger's apparently do not. A lot of them are able to focus on, if they have a task, they generally get very obsessed and focused on it, which I've certainly experienced now and then. And they often excel in whatever their task is because of a few things associated with it, the ability to recognize and see patterns, etc., etc. In retrospect, they think that Mozart and Beethoven were Asperger's syndrome, and Einstein, and a lot of the people who were considered geniuses throughout the generations are considered to have be on the ASD spectrum somewhere. I think that's what they even refer to themselves as, on the spectrum. Anyway, so that's my that's my blurb on the history of autism and Asperger's syndrome. I'll talk about symptoms and such on the next video. Thanks.